Latest conflict news updates for September 21st. Let's get right to it as we have several items of importance. Starting in Venezuela, multiple military and intelligence sources told the New York Times the Caribbean deployment suggests imminent bombings or commando operations inside Venezuela. Venezuelan President Maduro offered direct talks with Trump's envoy following U.S. strikes on Venezuelan vessels accused of drug trafficking and the subsequent buildup of the American fleet near Venezuela's coast. Moving to Washington, President Trump via Truth Social. We want Venezuela to immediately accept all of the prisoners and people from mental institutions, which includes the worst in the world insane asylums, that Venezuelan leadership has forced into the United States of America. Thousands of people have been badly hurt and even killed by these monsters. Get them the hell out of our country right now, or the price you pay will be horrible. The United States. Latest intel confirms Al Qaeda has 1,000 plus soldiers embedded in the U.S., and Bin Laden's sons have greenlit major attacks on American soil. If Afghanistan doesn't give the Bagram Air Base back to those that built it, the United States of America have indicated bad things are going to happen. Still in Washington, Trump on armed Russian MiG-31s breaching NATO ally Estonian airspace. I don't love it. I don't like it when that happens. This could be big trouble. Meanwhile, in New York, the UN Security Council has voted to reimpose sanctions on Iran, set to take effect on September 27th at 8 p.m. To the point, no opinions, just straight, fast daily news updates. And you enjoyed this content? Please steal a drone and sabotage that like button. To Ukraine, Russia launched 54 Shahed-type drones overnight. Moving to Russia. Russia has created military units whose soldiers are infected with AIDS, hepatitis, and other deadly chronic diseases. They are being sent to the front lines in meat assaults. Fighters from these units wear special armbands indicating their illness. It's pretty scary. Now moving to Czech. Czech President shoot down the next Russian who flies into NATO's airspace. Russia will realize very quickly that they have made a mistake and crossed the acceptable boundaries. To the United Kingdom, Royal Air Force Eurofighter Typhoon fighters have carried out the first patrol of Polish airspace as part of Operation Eastern Sentry overnight. To Poland, it appears Russia is only now beginning provocative, aggressive, adventurous moves against NATO's eastern flank, and we may see a sharp escalation in the near future. The Pentagon has informed European diplomats that the U.S. will partially suspend military aid to the Baltic countries and NATO states bordering Russia. According to Reuters, the Pentagon told European diplomats that the U.S. is now shifting its priority to the defense of the homeland. Estonia, September 22nd, at the Estonia, an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council will be held due to the violation of Estonian airspace by Russian MiG-31 fighters. Continuing with Estonia, Estonia admitted that they didn't shoot down Russian jets that entered Estonian airspace because Estonia has no military. Moving to Berlin, a cyber attack on check-in software developed by Collins Aerospace has disrupted flights at London's Heathrow, Brussels, and Berlin airports. Thousands of passengers have been delayed as airline staff are forced to switch to manual check-in. Italy, another example of hybrid war. Russia is sending the Italian mafia lots of new weapons and ammunition and requiring them to keep some in reserve. It looks like Putin is trying to start a lot of little fires to distract European countries and cut off support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, in Brussels, NATO officials announced that the alliance will address Russia's airspace breach on Tuesday. Meanwhile, in the Crimean Peninsula, occupied Crimea faces a fuel shortage as major gas stations report no AI 92 and limited 95. Some stations introduced ration coupons and long queues are forming. Drone strikes on oil refineries are cited as the main cause, with shortages also spreading to now over 20 regions within Russia. Moving to Lithuania. on what should be done with Russian fighter jets violating NATO airspace after 3 Russian jets violated Estonians' airspace yesterday. We need to mean business. Turkey set an example 10 years ago. Some food for thought. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, the Taliban has finally officially responded to Trump's call to return to Bagram Air Base. We're ready to fight for another 20 years. Meanwhile, an Afghan army chief, we will not relinquish a single inch of Afghan land to any party. Back to the Ukraine. Back on the table for discussion is a no-fly zone for Ukraine. Sikorsky has asked NATO to consider shielding Ukraine during Russian attacks, calling it the best way to prevent Russian drones from flying over other European territories. Meanwhile, in India, 2 Indian soldiers killed, 4+ injured after they were ambushed by a Pakistani-backed Kashmiri separatist groups. Meanwhile, in Syria, Syrian President Ahmed Sharia arrives in Washington for a 5-day visit, the first by a Syrian leader in decades. Meeting with U.S. officials and the Syrian American community is planned. Meanwhile, in Israel, Putin has been watching Israel's war in Gaza, viewing it as harsher than Russia's war in Ukraine, and noting that U.S. and European governments' acceptance of it undercuts the criticism of Moscow. Meanwhile, in Qatar, the reason Qatar's U.S.-made Patriot air defense systems failed to respond during an Israeli strike has been revealed. Qatar's ambassador to the U.S. admits the batteries were literally pointed the wrong way. Israel, Netanyahu says he'll meet President Trump for the 4th time since his term began, after the UN meeting, stressing they have plenty to discuss. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Israeli army intensifies its raids in the northern Gaza Strip, seen overnight. Israel Airports Authority saying coordination with Jordanian and Palestinians on by a passenger terminal will not be open to traffic on Sunday. Back to Qatar. Qatar says Israel must apologize for airstrikes on Hamas leaders in the country before it will resume mediating the hostage deal. Iraq's counterterrorism service convinced the killing of a senior leader of ISIS in Syria carried out in coordination with the U.S. allied Kurdish forces and international coalition. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has asked the Trump administration to press Egypt to scale down a recent military buildup in the Sinai Peninsula. Meanwhile, back to Venezuela. There's currently a 31% chance that we will see confrontation between U.S. and Venezuelan military by the end of the year. Do you see this happening? Let me know. If you do see it happening, put yes in the comments. If you don't see it happening, put no in the comments. Meanwhile, back to Iran. Iran immediately suspends all cooperation in the nuclear field with the atomic agencies. Meanwhile, back to Ukraine, Zelensky, we are discussing coordination with Poland and Romania to shoot down drones in the western regions of Ukraine. Meanwhile, in Greece, the Indian and Greek navies have launched a joint naval drill in the Mediterranean Sea. The Indian Navy is growing quickly and is now increasingly active in waters it didn't used to sail in just a few years ago. Meanwhile, in North Korea, since 2022, North Korea has transferred weapons, ammunition, and troops worth up to $9.8 billion to the Russian armed forces. That's the latest. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.